Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. All victory to Sanatana Dharma. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu Om Hari Om. Namaste, everyone. It is absolutely wonderful being here with you yet again with our usual Monday evening satsangha, at least Monday evening where I am. Again, we have people from all throughout the world, and I know that it's different time zones for different people. But in any case, whether it's morning for you, afternoon, evening, or 3 o'clock in the morning, I want to welcome, and it is a pleasure, my honor to be with you. Is what we have been doing every Monday, and that is having a traditional Vedic satsangha, what is called a satsangha. And what that is doing this, of course, as a live stream online. What we are doing is, for a period of an hour, having discussions about various topics related to the tradition of Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma, which is translated by me as the eternal natural way, is the actual name of what sometimes is called Hinduism. Hinduism is a made-up term. It's not a term that we really use in any way. Rather, we are practicing what some people call Hinduism, that is the Vedic tradition, in as authentic and traditional and orthodox a way as is possible, i.e. in accordance with the Vedic scriptures and the teachings of the previous rishis and acharyas. So this is what we do every Monday. And as usual, what I'm going to be doing today is giving a little bit of a talk. And today, speaking about 2 verses from the Narada Parivrajaka Upanishad. That sounds like quite. This is one of the Upanishads, and it is specifically the teachings of Narada Muni. And the reason why it's called the Narada Parivrajaka Upanishad is a Parivrajaka is an individual who is a sage, an individual who is essentially like a monk, an individual who chooses to devote themselves entirely to self-realization and God consciousness. So this Upanishad consists of Narada's instructions for what it means to be such a person, to be truly a sage, an individual who is holy and complete, again, to the process of spiritual unfolding. So that's what this Upanishad is. It's a rather long Upanishad. If you want to find a copy of it, either online or in print, please feel free to do so. Again, it's one of the longer of the Upanishads. But we're going to be focusing on 2 verses from this Upanishad in which Narada speaks very specifically about meditation. And the sort of meditation that Narada speaks about is indeed authentic meditation. Because, again, as I always have to remind people again and again, not all meditation is the same, especially today. in not just the Kali Yuga, but in 2020 with the internet. Sadly, if you look up meditation, you'll find 10,000 different ideas, some of which are somewhat traditional, many of which are absolutely made up and concocted, etc., etc. You'll have all sorts of people telling you to meditate on all sorts of things, and some may be close to right, many are wrong, a few will be correct. And how do you know the difference? Well, very simply, first of all, you need to ask yourself that in your meditation process, in the practice of meditation, you see, this is the number one thing that a spiritual practitioner has to ask themselves. What are they looking for? And as I've repeated many times, I can tell you that for myself, my personal answer, since I was a child, up until now, has always been the same. What am I looking for with meditation and indeed with spirituality? The highest. The highest. Not cheap tricks. Not just peace of mind. Certainly peace of mind. That's important too. But not just peace of mind. Not just a little bit of calm. Not just this, just that, etc. Rather, what we should seek in meditation is the highest goal that is attainable spiritually. And what does that mean? Well, certainly knowing ourselves perfectly, and that is truly knowing who we are as atman, as consciousness, but more than this, an even higher goal than that. And that may surprise some people that there is an even higher goal than self-realization, which is a sad commentary on spirituality today. But yes, even higher than that is God consciousness, i.e. knowing our actual source. This is the goal of actual meditation, and this is indeed truly authentic Vedic meditation. If there is any so-called guru, any YouTube video that you watch on meditation, any book that you purchase somewhere, etc., where they claim that in any way they are representing the Vedic tradition, and if they try to sell you on the idea that meditation is aimed toward anything less than knowing God, that is a lie. That is simply not true. And that person may be innocently saying that because they're just ignorant, but most likely not. Most likely they're trying to cheat you. So this is the highest goal of meditation, is indeed to know source, to know God, that which is the very foundation of our being, knowing which we then know everything. So all that being said, with these two verses that we're going to be looking at from this Upanishad, this is yet more scriptural proof of what I've just been saying. And truthfully, as I think you know, because we've commented on some of these other verses in the past, these are only what are thousands and thousands and thousands of verses in the Vedic corpus, in the Vedic literature, that backs up exactly what I just said. That meditation is not just to attain cheap tricks. It's not magic. It's not in order to gain occult sorts of powers. That's cheap. The goal of meditation is to know God. And once we know God, we have everything else that we need. So again, we're going to look at these two verses now. I will be commenting on them. After I have commented on these verses for some time, I will signal to you when it's time for questions and answers, and then please feel free to ask anything that you would like about Vedic spirituality. If you want to follow along with these verses, they are in the description of this live stream video, so you can take a look. So this is the first verse from the Narada Parivrajaka Upanishad, and this is chapter 5, verse 63. And the verse says, "Visualizing Lord Vishnu in everything, both outwardly and inwardly, the sage shall move about at all times, silent and free, from impurity like the breeze." Beautiful, beautiful verse. And again, it is interesting that, as is the case with so many of these verses, it's very specific. It's very specific. You know, there's very little, if any, vagueness in the Vedic scriptures. If there ever does seem to be a little bit of vagueness, there's an absolute reason why it's the case, but it's a very rare thing. So, like with many of the other, again, verses from Vedic scriptures, these are very specific. Visualization is precisely what this Upanishad says in Sanskrit. Not visualizing anything you want, not pick whatever you want to visualize on because it's all the same. No. Vishnu, Narayana, Krishna, that which is logically considered to be Vishnu Tattva, i.e., what commonly in the Western world is called God. This is what we meditate on, very specifically. So let's go through this verse, and then we'll go through the second one in a short time, but we'll start with this one. So first, visualizing Lord Vishnu. This, let me warn you, but I'm warning you about this just for fun more than anything. These three words, visualizing Lord Vishnu, the truth of the matter is we could do a commentary on for an hour, and that would not be enough time to cover it. Simply these three words, visualizing Lord Vishnu. Because, again, several things. First of all, the three words. Again, not just anyone, but Vishnu. Why? Why the specificity? Because in the Vedic tradition, the idea of God is that God is radically a personal being. Again, God is not vague. If your idea is that you wish to know God in a more vague way because specificity comes too close to home and is a little bit too much, well, then the Vedic tradition will be a little bit of a challenge for you. Again, Lord Vishnu, Narayana, is who all the Vedic scriptures, not just this scripture, but all the Vedic scriptures is ultimately pointing to. And then visualizing. What is meant very specifically by visualizing? Well, of course, we know that in the modern context of, let's say, New Age spirituality, we have visualization exercises where you visualize different things in meditation, etc., or you want something in your life materially, you visualize yourself having that. That is not in any way, shape, or form what is being discussed here when this word visualizing is being used. Rather, what is meant by visualizing is this is indeed a deep process of meditation in which we meditate upon the personal form of God. And indeed, God has a form. Now, wait. Here's the question that, again, someone will ask. But how can God have a form? How can God... As soon as you ask, how can God X, you don't understand God. Yes, God can do anything. And God does indeed have form. You have form. Are you greater than God? You see, God does indeed have form. But of course, when we say form, what are we speaking about? We're speaking about a form the likes of which is inconceivable. We're talking about a form without bounds, a form that does not exist within the context of space, time, or causality. We're talking about an eternal spiritual form in the mode of consciousness. Thus, what we mean by form is locus of personality. Again, it's interesting. The personalist school versus the impersonalist is infinitely more philosophical than most people sadly give it credit for today. Again, by locus of personality, this is what is meant by form, i.e., that God is indeed I. So thus, this is what we are to meditate upon, is the personal aspect of God. And what does this mean as far as actual visualization? Well, this is why in the Vedic tradition, we do indeed employ iconic imagery. And the truth of the matter is this was the case for every single ancient pre-Abrahamic spiritual tradition on the face of the earth, i.e., we use imagery in meditation as a tool for meditation. So this is why if you visit a Hindu or Vedic temple, what you will see are statues everywhere. These are not quote-unquote idols. These are statues. These are representational images of the divine that are meant to be used as a technical means of meditation. These are tools that we meditate upon. So thus, in visualizing God, we indeed begin by employing this sacred imagery. So thus, we meditate upon either an actual what is called murti or statue, or even just a painting or any sort of legitimate, authentic image of, again, either Krishna or Narayana. and we begin to meditate on the different aspects of God, exactly like. Then, having seen visually what God looks like, then we begin the process of, in an interior sort of way, visualizing in meditation the various paraphernalia of God, and quite literally meditating upon this, seeking to transform that meditative visualization into an actual darshana, an actual vision of God within. So this is the process, and it's a logical process. It is the process of sadhana. And this is how we, as devotees of Krishna, of Narayana, as followers of Vedic spirituality, this is how we practice. This is how we do sadhana. So now, all that on those 3 words, let's go on a little bit more. Visualizing Lord Vishnu in everything. So thus the omnipresence of God. Understanding that, yes, we meditate upon God in the form of murti, first of all. Then inwardly in meditation, visualizing God quite literally in the mind's eye. But then coming to the point where this goes from visualization to realization. And we now come to the point where even in, let's say, awakened consciousness, that is, when we're not officially sitting down and meditating, but we're up and about and doing our things in the world, we still are visualizing Lord Vishnu in all things. And we understand that Vishnu, God, is quite literally omnipresent in all of reality, everywhere that we look about us. So when we're looking at other beings, whether human beings or non-human beings, when we're looking even at inanimate objects, we understand that deep within, God is present there, sustaining the very being of that object with his presence. So we begin to visualize God quite literally in everything. So, visualizing Lord Vishnu in everything, both outwardly and inwardly. So that's rather self-explanatory. So again, in all things, whether inwardly as we're in meditation, or as we are, again, in normative consciousness and kind of doing our things in the world, we're visualizing Lord Vishnu. And now, doing this, and again, these verses are talking about an individual who is a sage. This is Narada Muni's instructions for how to be truly a sage, a true yogi. So he says, the sage shall move about at all times, silent and free. Let's stop there for now. So again, the sage is traversing this world as we have to. Again, this idea of being a sage, being a yogi, being that, you are just kind of sitting stationary, immobilized in a cave for the rest of your life. No, that's not the case. That's the stereotype of the yogi, and especially in the Kali Yuga, especially today in 2020. Rather, the sage, an individual who is thoroughly devoted to knowing God, is an individual who has to lead a very practical life. So they're moving about. However, as they're moving about, they are moving about in a very special way, silent. Let's stop there. What is meant by silence? Not literally that they never speak. Of course not. We know that sages indeed speak all the time. They teach, etc. What is meant by silence is that they have gravitas. What is meant by silence is that the sage, the yogi, the serious spiritual practitioner is someone who has control over their speaking apparatus. They have control over their mouth. And this is why when the sage speaks, you be quiet and listen. Because when that sage does speak, what is being said is something which, if you understand it, can change your life for the better. So this is what is meant by the sage moves about in silence. It's not that they don't speak. No, they do. They teach. But they are in control of their speech, and they speak with gravitas. And when they do speak, they speak about something important. Let me tell a very interesting little story. In these live streams, it seems that I often will tell little stories about my own journey, a little bit more so than in just giving the normal lectures, but just kind of to illustrate this. this actually happened. I'm not sure how old I was, maybe 10, something like that. And I remember that my father and we were visiting my relatives. This was the Italian side of my family in Queens, New York. And we were visiting them, and there was a family function. And I was known for doing this, that whenever there would be family functions, there could be 20 people there, however many. But I would always be very quiet. And again, my family, these are New York Italians. If you know anything about New York Italians, these are the loudest, most talkative people in the world. And it's wonderful. I enjoyed being in that environment and listening, but I would be very quiet. I would be very, very quiet. One day I was at this family function, and one of my uncles, just meaning well, he was a very jovial person. He approached my dad and he said, "Oh, hey, what's wrong with your son? You know, how come he never talks? He never joins us. He never tries to make small talk with anyone." And I remember to this day, because I had never seen my father like this. You know, my father was a very strong man, but very quietly so. But that seemed to upset him. And he turned to my uncle and he said, "My son, he doesn't make small talk. He only makes big talk." 10 years old. And when I heard him say that about me, I was truly amazed that he knew that he understood that about my nature. That, yes, the sage is not someone who makes small talk. When they speak, they're saying something of importance. So this is what's meant by silence. And free from impurity. Of course, that's a given. A sage is an individual. This example, several live streams ago, someone was asking me about the Aghoris, this bizarre sect where they do impure and psychic imaginable, and it's something that's extrinsic to the Vedic tradition. It has nothing to do with the Vedic tradition. On the contrary, the scriptures tell us multiple times, and unmistakably so, an individual who indeed exercises purity in themselves. They are free from impurity. That means impurity in, again, what they say, in what they think, in what they do. Now, all this being the case, how does this one verse end? They move about like a breeze. In other words, effortlessly. This is the lifestyle of the sage, is that they exist in this world, they do in this world seemingly effortlessly, to the point where others look upon them and they're amazed. How can this individual do so much and yet be calm and yet maintain who they are? So it's an amazing thing. This is what we are to attain, indeed, if we are to make spiritual progress and to know that highest. Now, let's go on to the second verse. And this is, again, Narada Parivrajaka Upanishad, but now this is also chapter 5, but verse 64. And this verse is thus: meditating on Vishnu, the Supreme Self, Paramatman, and Lord, Ishana, contemplating on supreme bliss and remembering that he alone is Brahman, the sage shall spend his time. So very nice verse. Somewhat similar to the last one, except it is indeed a little bit different, and we'll go over this. So the first verse that we talked about began with visualizing Lord Vishnu. This one now says meditating on Vishnu. It really is the same thing, just a little bit of a technical difference. But meditating on Vishnu, and now in the clauses that are upcoming, there is a qualification as to, all right, who is this Vishnu? Because again, we are talking about meditation. We are talking about the highest meditation. We are talking about the highest meditation that is revealed in the Vedic scriptures. And we're talking about the highest meditation that is revealed in the Vedic scriptures in the most accurate, pinpointed of ways. So meditating on Vishnu. Now, why? Why Vishnu? Why not this person, that person, some person down the street, some person, whatever we can conceive of. Now there are the qualifications explaining why Vishnu. Who is Vishnu? Paramatman, the Supreme Self. The Supreme Self. No one else can claim this. We are all a self. We are each a self, an individual self. I am a self. You are a self. You are not me. I am not you. This is what is amazing, and this is what is truly, truly mind-boggling, truly astounding, is all these new agey people who go on and on about, in a very, very childlike, very immature, very simple way about oneness, 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 we're all one, we're all, I'm you. That is indeed infantile. Philosophical complexity is something that we are now encountering when we understand this idea of Atman and Paramatman. What is even more unique than the mere idea of quote-unquote oneness without really understanding what that actually means is this: the idea that God is the source of an infinite number of individual Atmans, each one of which is unique. When we contemplate what this actually means, it is truly astounding to think that when I say that, yes, I am indeed me and you are not, guaranteed, you are not me and I am not you. Are we connected? Of course we are, in that we are all Atman, certainly. But again, that's easy to understand. The connections, interestingly, are easy to understand. What is more astounding philosophically and philosophically interesting is the fact that in the face of the fact that we are all indeed individual Atmans, we are indeed individual, we are unique. And what does it mean for God to be a being who has the ability effortlessly, just by his very nature, to be the source of not pick a number and even that doesn't describe it. No, an infinite number of Atmans, all of whom are unique in comparison to the other Atmans. This is amazing. But then, what is being said in this verse, and again, as I've said in the past, in so many verses in the Upanishads, there is this distinction that there is us, we, individual, finite, limited Atmans, who we have our source in something else, thus we are dependent. We are effect, not cause. That's one thing. But then, very specifically, there is this concept of Paramatman. That is that one unique Atman who is unique because it is the supreme Atman. It is indeed the source. This is Vishnu. This is Narayana. This is God. And this is what makes us not God, because we cannot claim that we are the source of an infinite number of other Atmans. God can. So thus, Paramatman and Lord, Ishana, and Lord. So thus worshipable, so thus personal, so thus that object of our devotion, that center of reality toward which all of reality is devoted. That is Ishana, that is another term for Narayana, that is God, the Lord. So now, continuing, contemplating on supreme bliss. We'll stop there. This is a very nice clause in which to stop. Again, we're still talking about the meditator. So Narada is explaining, this is how you meditate. So, contemplating on supreme bliss. What does this mean? Well, this is what we are experiencing. This is meditation, not merely in theory, but in experience. In actual meditative practice and experience, this is precisely what we are doing. We are contemplating that supreme bliss, i.e., consciousness, true spirituality, ananda, anandam. Consciousness is considered to have many, many different attributes, one of which is indeed anandam. And it's in meditation, when we are steeped in actual meditation, that we begin to experience the bliss of our own self, but then even greater than that, the bliss that we experience in worshiping and having devotion toward God, toward Vishnu. So thus we are quite literally contemplating that supreme bliss. We are bathing ourselves in that supreme bliss. This is what we do. So, and that he alone, who, this last clause is essentially saying, this is the lifestyle of the sage. is everything that was just explained in these last two verses. That is, contemplating Lord Vishnu, meditating upon Lord Vishnu, visualizing Lord Vishnu, having devotion toward Lord Vishnu, having awareness of Lord Vishnu. In this way, the sage contemplates and lives his life throughout the totality of his life in this world and beyond. And this is the goal of meditation. So, very good. Very nice. So all that being said, I hope that you enjoyed these two verses, and I will stop my lecture here for now. And I would like to signal to everyone that if you have any questions, now is the time to please feel free to ask any questions. And again, because we only have an hour per week, it's only once in a while that I'll tell people, oh, please try to be strict and ask questions about the verses that I spoke about. But yeah, please, any, again, legitimate questions about Vedic spirituality, please feel free to ask. Here's a good question. This is a very practical question, actually, that I would love to answer. And this is Adam Page. Namaste Acharyaji, is music an impediment to spiritual progress? I listen and play classical music and classic rock. Is it necessary to stop engaging with music to progress in the spiritual path? Very practical question. This is the problem. Different people will tell you different things, and that's why there's too much speculation in the world. I'll give you the actual answer from the Vedic perspective. Not only is music not an impediment, but on the contrary, music is something that has always been extremely important in the Vedic tradition. And music in every form. Of course, this is what's important to understand. Stopped for a minute. Did we stop for a moment? All right. I had an indication that the live stream stopped for just a few moments. This happens once in a while, and it's not us. It is always YouTube. It has nothing to do with anything on our end, unfortunately. So before I go on, I once again just need to make sure people can actually see me and hear me. So if people can just indicate in the chat, please, that everything is fine and that you can see and hear me. Once I get confirmation, then I'll continue. No indication yet. All right, there we go. All right, very good. So it looks like everything is working now. Very good. And I have seen a few comments about buffering. Again, sadly, that does happen. And there, let me explain, there is zero that we can do on our end. We have quite literally the best equipment available. And it's nothing, and very high-speed internet. It's nothing on our end. It is YouTube. For whatever reason, YouTube, I guess, has problems once in a while. But again, I don't know how much I was cut off from answering this last question. But let me just sum up by saying, indeed, music is something that in itself can be spiritual, but also there has always been the recognition, even in Vedic culture, that indeed not everything has to be 100%, let's say, aligned with spirituality at all times. In other words, there is indeed such a thing as, oh, just secular enjoyment. Nothing wrong with this. There is nothing wrong with, oh, just listening to some very nice music that maybe is not 100% devoted to God per se, but it is expressing beauty. This is true for art as well, etc. You can have paintings, for example, of Krishna that are very beautiful and obviously spiritual. But what if you have a painting of nature, just beautiful nature, and Krishna is not there specifically? Oh, does that mean that somehow that should be thrown away and, oh, that's bad? No, it's also something that is artistic and thus has to be appreciated in an aesthetic sort of way. Well, it's the same thing with music. The important thing is that music should always be Sattvic. That is, it should elevate us. That's the important thing. And it doesn't matter whether it's classical. Indeed, it could even be rock. It could even be some contemporary forms of music. As long as it's something that elevates us spiritually, psychically, emotionally, etc., then certainly it's a good thing and not necessarily an impediment. Again, some forms of music that are. And I'm always very blunt with people about this. And, it can be explained from the perspective of yoga psychology why this is the case. And with the understanding of gunas, do not listen to. So we do not listen to rap. There's no such thing as spiritual rap music. We don't listen to black metal. We don't listen to death metal. There's some kinds of music, the very genre of which are just dark, are tamasic, are just evil. So we don't listen to these forms of music. So I hope that answers the question somewhat. Oh, very good. Very good. So let me answer this question from Sri Ram, and this has to do with the sanskaras. And you had asked this yesterday when we had our more exclusive, more private Q&A session. But again, I wasn't sure because there are two aspects of samskaras, and I asked you to qualify which you meant. So you ask here, Namaste Acharyaji. So samskaras as the inner psyche of the individual, that is impressions. What are they, and do they play a part in what talents we have in our present life? Very good. Yes, sanskaras are impressions that are impressed upon the psyche. This is what is meant by sanskaras in the psychological sense. That is, when we have experiences in the world, and these can be any kind of experience, that are especially strong, that are especially either positively, they're just an extremely good experience, or they can be a traumatic experience. And as a result, there is a somewhat more permanent, they're never 100% permanent, but somewhat more permanent impression upon our psyche that is there for some time. And with the negative sanskaras especially, yes, those do indeed have to be overcome as much as possible. This is part of the process of sadhana. So you ask here, what part do they play in the talents that we have in our present life? Like karma, like memory, like so many different aspects that create our persona, not our actual spiritual personality, but the material persona by which others perceive us and by which we interact with the world. All of these are colored by the persona is colored by all of these different factors, including the sanskaras. So that's what they are, that's how they work, and they do indeed have an important role to play in many of the talents that we do have. But more than that, in the emotional well-being that we are experiencing at any given time. More than anything, the reason why we try to overcome negative sanskaras is, again, because they tend to be somewhat traumatic. So when we find that we have fear in life, when we find that we have resentment, when we find that we have any negative emotional state like this, it tends to be due to these sanskaras. And again, the sanskaras can be overcome by spiritual practice, by meditation, by realizing what sanskaras we have and then dealing with them individually. Sometimes one can do this on one's own if a person is wise enough, but often it is important to have the guidance of a guru in order to overcome these individual sanskaras. So I hope that answers that question. I've kind of answered questions like this in the past, but I'm briefly going to answer this because it is an important question that so many people experience. And this is Nick, who's asking, most of my family is completely asleep and believe everything they are told by the dark authorities, quote unquote. How can I help them awaken to the truth of what's really going on? Should I push or let them be? Yes, this is indeed a problem that so many people face today. Let me tell you, you're not alone. That's number one, Nick. You're not alone. And I'll give you the same answer that I've given in the past. And that is this, that yes, when you find yourself in a terrible situation like this, where you are beginning to, or even for some time, you have awakened to what is the nature of reality, the nature of this world, etc. Both spiritually, but then again, as far as just world events, what is actually happening in the world. When you yourself have awoken, but then you see that your family have not, yes, it can lead to a lot of contention. It can lead to a lot of arguments that take place, misunderstandings, etc. And this is why it is important to indeed not push it, but rather the very best way that you are going to help your family to awaken to reality is to be as good a, let's say, practical example, a personal example for them as you can be. So in other words, don't just tell them, show them. Don't just tell them about all these things that are happening in the world and what is the nature of reality, both good and bad. Because A, not everyone is ready to hear such things immediately. And B, again, the best way is to just show them by your own personal example. Become the sort of person who they will truly respect, and they will want to know more about why is it that Nick, now practicing spirituality, going against the grain, being kind of a countercurrent against the current culture, why is he so happy? Why is he so peaceful? He seems to know something that we don't. And at this point, rather than you pushing it, they will approach you and they will begin to inquire from you. And then at that point, very humbly, and again, not dumping everything upon them at once, because you're going to want to, but no, with constraint, little by little, teaching them in a proper sort of way, you begin to bring them to an awakening progressively. So I hope that was helpful with that question. Here's a good question. What form of spiritual warfare, let me read this again. What form of spiritual warfare use against the individuals that perpetuate this adharmic world system? Will simply and purely meditating on Vishnu give us the power to destroy adharma? And for those who don't know, adharma is the opposite of dharma. So that is what is meant by that. Very good question. Excellent question. Let me answer the second part first, actually, because that serves as the foundation for then the first part. So as far as simply and purely meditating on Vishnu, will this give us the power to destroy adharma? Yes, personally. It will for you as a person. In other words, you speak about spiritual warfare against evil, demonic people and beings. In order to do this, to wish to do this is not enough, but rather you need to strengthen yourself internally, spiritually, in such a way that the wish can now become manifest in reality. So this is why, beginning with, yes, indeed, meditating upon Lord Vishnu, and especially the way that we do, again, the way that was described in these 2 verses, but then so many verses throughout the Vedic scriptures, and the let's say simplest, most approachable, efficacious way being meditating on Om Namah specifically. By meditating upon Lord Vishnu, we find that inner strength within of purity, of truth, of wisdom, etc., and ultimately of empowerment directly by God, such that we can indeed defeat evil. So this is why I always tell people, the fact that you are enthusiastic and you want to charge off into the world and destroy evil in this world, that's a good desire. But hold on. First, equip yourself with the armor that's necessary to do that. And that armor is spiritual. That is Narayana Kavacham. That is the armor of God. Narayana Kavacham. First, give yourself that armor of God, such that you have the strength to now go out into the world, and yes, in every form. So yes, begin with this meditation upon Vishnu. And then as far as what form of spiritual warfare is appropriate to use, there are many things that can be done ritually, etc., and very practically. Very practically, many people, I'm sure, have given very practical advice about what to do. The greatest thing to do is to awaken others to the nature of evil. You know, evil operates in darkness. What does that mean? That means that evil can operate when people are ignorant of evil, when people are not aware of evil, when awakened to evil. So thus, take away that darkness from the world in which evil operates. That is, awaken people spiritually. Take this message of Sanatana Dharma and spread it to every corner of the world, at least every corner of your world, as much as possible. Not in a fanatical way. No, as I was saying to the previous individual, no, in a very humble way, in whatever way is within your means, your capacity. Do everything you can to awaken people. And if your means are limited, ours are not. Help us. Help the International Sanatana Dharma Society, because this is indeed what we do, except we do this on a massive scale with so many different programs and projects that we have going on. These live streams, this YouTube channel alone being only one, in which we are attempting to wake up millions upon millions of people. Help us to do this, and indeed evil will be defeated. So I hope that was somewhat helpful. What is the Vedic understanding of how the covenant of Abraham happened? Was it a pact with an asura? Yes. Yes, indeed. The covenant that occurred with Abraham, thus what we call Abrahamism, that is the resultant effect of this covenant that Abraham had for roughly 4,000 years ago with this being who he encountered in the deserts of the Levant, what today is called Palestine, Israel, etc. Yes, this was a being who was not God, who was not Narayana, who was not the Supreme, who was not the Absolute. How do you know this? Well, you read well, first of all, you understand what is the nature of the Absolute, and then you read the rest of the Old Testament, and you see that that being was not God. So indeed, it was an Asura. And for now, that's all I'll say. But if you want much more information, of course, I go very in depth in. This is not something that is controversial. This is not something that's open to debate. This is not something where in the Vedic scriptures there's confusion about. There's absolutely nothing confusing about this whatsoever. The very simple answer in accordance with the Vedic scriptures is that Lord Vishnu, or Narayana, is the source of all avatars. Krishna is an of Lord Vishnu, very simply. So that is the answer to that. I know that very specifically with ISKCON, which is one Vaishnava organization, they of course say the opposite. But again, there's no scriptural proof of this. Simply the fact that this is said alone does not make it so, does not make it the case. The totality of the Vedic scriptures, from the Vedas themselves to the Upanishads, to the Mahabharata, to the Ramayana, to the Bhagavad Gita, to all the other Puranas, Vishnu Purana, etc., and on, are all very clear about this, that there is Vishnu, Narayana, who is the source of all the avatars, including Krishna, including Rama, including Narasingha, including Kalki, etc., etc., etc. And this has been the accepted understanding in the totality of the Vedic tradition, including in all the Vaishnava Sampradayas, the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, Brahma Sampradaya, etc., etc. And it is only ISKCON and a few other allied, very tiny groups like this who disagree. So that is the answer to that. Narayana, Vishnu, is the source of all the avatars. Very good. I hope that was helpful. Thank you for a very nice comment. This is Mike Maldonado. Your live streams are the best part of the week. That is very kind of you to say. Let me tell you, it's the best part of my week. I very much enjoy performing this humble service for all of you. So thank you for that nice comment. And please be a little bit patient as I look through these questions. There are so many questions, of course, as always, that I do my best to really find questions that are extremely, especially interesting and that I think a large number of people will benefit from. So please bear with me for just a few moments. I see a lot of comments, some of which are quite good, but again, I'm looking for questions. How do you feel about the hardcore Krishna rap and metal that is out there? It is tamasic. It is tamasic. You see, simply to say that I am doing X thing in service to Krishna does not, in and of itself, make it something that is sattvic. You see, I can say, oh, I am open. You know, for those who truly understand the Vedic tradition, you know that we are strict vegetarians. To say, oh, I am opening up a local branch of McDonald's, I'm going to be the owner of it. But I'm dedicating my Krishna. No, that does not take away from the fact that it is an abominable business to have, and it's something that is purely tamasic in every way. To simply say, oh, I am devoting X thing to Krishna does not necessarily change the essential content of that thing, if it is indeed something that is anti-dharmic. So in the same way, yes, so-called rap music and really hardcore metal that is devoted to Krishna, no, that does not in and of itself make it something that is sattvic. It is tamasic and should be avoided as much as possible. Again, music should elevate us in every way imaginable. Very good. And again, please be patient. I'm looking for some actual questions here. Here's a very good philosophical question, actually, and this might be the last question that I'll take, only because it is indeed very philosophical, and it's a question that, yes, many people have asked actually for many thousands of years, which is not denigrating the question. On the contrary, it is indeed a very good philosophical question, and that is, if free will can lead to beings choosing to be evil, isn't it better for free will not to exist, so all beings are perfected and serve God? Yes, that is a question that, again, has been asked in many different contexts, both the Vedic context, but also classical Greco-Roman philosophy, even a little bit in Christian philosophy as well, meaning real Christian philosophy, meaning medieval Christian philosophy, etc. It's been asked in some aspects of Chinese philosophy. It's been asked in many different contexts. And the truth of the matter is, no, free will, is something that is an essential attribute of the atman itself. The reason why it's an essential attribute of the atman is because free will is something that is contained in God, in our source. So in order to understand this, we need to begin first with this idea of God as our source. The nature of God is that God contains within himself absolutely nothing that is not of the nature of good. So thus, anything that is contained in God is something that is of the nature of good. This being the case, God choosing to share with us as atmans, as byproducts of himself, this attribute of free will, which God himself has, in and of itself means that it is a good. So that is true, let's say, philosophically, metaphysically. But then let's become a little bit more practical about this. Why is it that God indeed contains free will within himself, and thus we also, as atmans, have free will? Well, very simply, free will is one of the aspects that make us indeed who we are. It is essential. It is something that is an aspect of our very personality. It is an aspect of Atman itself, the negation of which would render Atman into non-Atman. That is, rather than being sentient beings without free will, we would be insentient. Because indeed, this is one of the distinguishing attributes between that which is a sentient being, that is a living being, an actual living being, versus a being that is not. So thus, I can point to anything that is here. And I've done this in the past. This is a pen. Well, what is the difference between my pen? Several things, but this is one of the main criteria one of the main things that is different, is that I indeed have free will, this pen does not. Now, the resultant effect is that it is indeed an insentient object because it does not have free will, i.e., I can use it as an object. I can do anything with it. It doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't have choice. It doesn't have the ability to protest. Indeed, it has no desire whatsoever. There is quite literally nothing of the nature of consciousness within it. So if I choose to break it, let's say, it's not going to protest. It doesn't have the ability. So thus, without free will, a sentient being becomes an insentient being. It becomes like a robot. It becomes a robot. You know, it may mechanically have the ability, because of course, even in the material world, we have robots. God could have created an infinite army of robots that do not have consciousness, that do not have free will. They seemingly would have had motion and been able to move, but again, it would have been a robot. It would not have the ability to enjoy. It would not have the ability to interact in any meaningful sort of way, etc. So this is why God gave us free will, so that we could fully express who we are as a reflection of God, and God having free will. So thus, with all this as an understanding, now comes the second part, and that is having free will, A, but also coupled with B, being limited in nature, i.e. Very good. Once again, it looks like the streaming stopped for just a short time, which is very unfortunate because I was in the midst of a philosophical explanation. I will just assume that you can all see and hear me again because, yes, we did everything on our part that we needed to do. But essentially to end, very good, to end what I was saying, in order for we as finite beings to have free will, we also have to have the ability of making mistakes. That is there due to our very finitude itself. So God being infinite, God has omniscience, God has omnipotence, God is what's called an omnicompetent being. So thus God can express his free will in such a way that mistakes are not a possibility. We, on the other hand, being finite, mistakes have to be a possibility. And without those, let's say, constraining possibilities that are there in our choices, free will is taken away. So in other words, if we do not have the freedom to make a mistake as a finite being, then we don't have freedom. Then we don't have freedom. You see, to say that, oh, we have freedom, but we don't have the freedom to make mistakes, is kind of like saying to any one of us, oh, you have complete freedom, but only to do what I tell you to. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. In the same way, to say, oh, you have freedom, but you do not have the freedom to make a mistake. You do not have the freedom to choose something that is wrong versus right. That's taking away from your actual freedom. So this is a very quick, very brief explanation of the idea of free will, etc. I hope that was helpful. And again, even though, again, it's not It's not due to anything we're doing. Again, I have to apologize on YouTube's behalf that we had so many problems seemingly with the live stream this evening. I don't know why. Again, it was YouTube. But I hope that this was helpful for people. I hope that you derived some benefit from hearing these explanations and more. Again, as I say once in a while, and I'm going to say this evening as well, please don't let these live streams just be, let's say, an interesting philosophical outlet for you. Certainly begin with that. We have to have our philosophical inquiry satisfied. But more than this, I ask that all of you also practice spirituality in a very living sort of way. Because philosophy is one thing. I've studied philosophy all my life, including in college, graduate school, etc., but certainly on my own, just for my own satisfaction and search for God, etc. Philosophy is a wonderful thing, but without practice, philosophy is empty. It's kind of like a wonderful philosophy book that is there sitting on your shelf just gathering dust. You have to actually do the action of opening it and then applying it to your life. In the same way, I ask people to also follow what these verses say. Meditate upon Vishnu. And very simply, if you don't know how, go to our channel, which you're on right now, Dharma Nation. Go to the playlists. Find the playlists. You will find a playlist where we have, I think, about a dozen or so videos on meditation alone. So the information is there. Just look on the playlists of our channel and you will see videos on meditation. Begin to practice meditation in your own life. And by meditating on Vishnu, you will know everything. You will know joy, you will know wisdom, you will know happiness. So with that, I thank you very much for being here. Just as a reminder, we do this every Monday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So please be here again next week if you can. If you have not already done so, please subscribe to this channel. As you've seen, the information that is given here spiritually is like information that is not available anywhere, YouTube or BitChute or any place else. So please subscribe. Use this opportunity. Visit our website when you have a chance, dharmacentral.com. When you're there, please look at our books that are available. We have quite a few books that are there that explain this tradition very, very in-depth as you wish to understand it. Also join our email list when you're at dharmacentral.com. And when you do that, periodically you'll get some information, more information, announcements about what we are doing. And then finally, if indeed you are a supporter of the ISDS, if you are a follower of Sanatana Dharma, please consider becoming a monthly tithing member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. That will, in so many ways, help us with the many, many different projects that we are working on in order to bring Dharma to the world and, as several people mentioned in the chat, to awaken people. This is what we do. This is what I do. This is quite literally what the totality of my being is to awakening people. This is what I do from the second that morning until the second that I go to sleep at night. And we need your support. We need your help. So please consider becoming a member if you have not done so already. With that, again, thank you very much for being here. Hopefully we will see you again next Monday at 7 p.m. And with that, Jaya Shriman Narayana, Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna, Jaya Shri Guru, Sanatana Dharma Jayate, victory to the eternal natural way. Jaya Shri Vishnu. Namaste, everyone. And as I always say, please take very good care of yourselves until next we meet. Take care.